Thanks for tuning in to the Proline Handicapping Show on the web. Coming up, the Cavs and Clippers in Saturday's NBA, plus NC State and Wake Forest, and Colorado State versus San Diego State in college basketball, and then playoff action with the Eagles taking on the Saints. But first, let's hear from our Proline panelists as they break down last week's playoff action.
Well, welcome back to Proline. It's always fun to do this show, but especially on a week like this when we have so much activity in sports. The NBA is going on. We got the NFL wild card games to talk about from last week. Divisional playoffs coming up this week. You got college basketball really heating up with the conference games. We've got coaching changes. We've got coaches who 2 years ago said, you play to win the game. And this week he went out to play to lose the game. We'll talk about that in a minute. So we're going to cover all the NFL games that we played last week and just see what happened and how that may carry over into this week. Starting off with the Kansas City-Indianapolis game, the Indianapolis Colts came out with a defense that they haven't had all year long. Looked like maybe a couple of years ago when Dungy first went there, a little bit strong. Shut down the run, the Kansas City Chiefs didn't have a first down for 3 quarters. Now, was that the Indianapolis Colts defense that did that? Or when you run the ball into the line every time with Larry Johnson, off tackle right, off tackle left, and they're stacking the line, 9 guys, and then drop back to pass, and they blitz them every time. Is that a good offense or a good defense? I mean, what is that?
Well, it's partially the defense. They got Sanders back for the Indianapolis Colts, and they finally got a guy who can pay attention to the pass but can also cheat up and help out against the run. And when he does, he doesn't let himself get burned by the pass. But you're right, Herm Edwards. I mean, there was one coaching job this week that was on par with Herm Edwards, and that was probably Tressel at Ohio State. But this is what Kansas City got when they signed him. Dave and I mean, first thing we did back in August is run out and take Kansas City under. Now, they almost got to that 9.5 win total in the regular season, but the fact is they didn't, and we collect the bet. But I can remember when they first signed Herm Edwards, and people were saying, you know, maybe his genius hasn't come out yet because he hasn't been in the right setting. You know what my comment was? The only thing genius about Herm Edwards is the contract he got. He worked with Kansas City. I mean, he's not a good coach. He's an okay coach. He's probably a fantastic assistant, but he's not at the head coaching level. That was a horrible job that he did.
No, I think he's an okay coach. You know, they did win 9 games. They managed to make the playoffs. You know, they're not awful. But then there was no imagination, and I think the collar was real tight for Edwards in this game. And unpredictability is a pretty important aspect of coming up with a game plan in the NFL, because if the other team knows what's coming, I don't care who it is, they'll stop you. A pro football, there's no bad NFL players. I mean, these guys are all good, and they just gave them the same thing over and over again. And I still think, you know, we'll never know, but I still think they had the wrong guy at quarterback. This is a better football team this year with Hewitt at quarterback, and I think the way the Colts were able to game plan defensively had something to do with the fact that there's less fear of Trent Green right now. I mean, he just doesn't get down the field.
That's the whole problem. First of all, I mean, you want to say, is this guy a good coach or not? When you've got a former University of Washington Husky sitting on the bench at quarterback, and you don't use him, then there's something wrong with the guy. But as you said, seriously, Dave, what you said, Indianapolis has trouble stopping the run all season long. So naturally, you come in with arguably the second best running back in the NFL, maybe, in Johnson. Still, when you know that a team was going to run the ball 2 straight times and then suddenly pass it on 3rd and long, I mean, over and over again.
I thought Alex Webster resurrected the old Giants back in the 60s. That was his offense.
Well, they were going for that 1 yard in a cloud of dust is what they were doing. But, you know, they have no deep threat. I mean, Otis Taylor can't play anymore. That's the last time they had a consistent deep threat to go downfield. And so Indianapolis had to know. They almost fell into a Cincinnati game plan. Remember that Thursday night game a few weeks ago? When Cincinnati said, well, we're going to come in and just run the ball down their throats, they forgot about, you know, dancing with the chick that brought them.
You open up the run with the pass.
Exactly.
I mean, if you know that they're sensitive about not being able to stop the run, you come out on first down, you play a play action, go deep, loosen up the defense, and you have the game.
And the reason I went with Indy, even though all that is correct, is because Kansas City doesn't have the consistent deep threat that a defense has to worry about. And in the times that he did throw it on target to Tony Gonzalez, Gonzalez might as well have been back in the basketball court because he dropped everything.
I do think you know, while it's easy to pick on Kansas City here, you know, you got to give the Colts credit too. They really came to play, and
Well, all except Manning, who didn't have a
That's what I was going to say. You'd have told him before.
Well, Ty Law ruined his day.
He did,
Again.
30 for 39, which is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that's pretty damn.
But he did have 3 interceptions, and 2 of those, only one of them was really a bad
receiver
pass.
made
The
a
other
long
2,
cut.
roots got broken off, and I think there was some miscommunication there. But regardless of how they happened, had you told me beforehand, Peyton Manning's going to have 3 interceptions,
You're going to lose.
I would not have been feeling good about my Indianapolis bet.
Right.
Jim, one other thing, getting back to what you mentioned, you said that a team that tries to run the ball like that against a squad that's giving up so many yards, 170 yards, I think, on the ground on average for the season, a lot of times you can understand it if you throw everybody in the box. You've got 7, 8 men in the box, but if you watch the beginning of that game, the Colts had the regular defense. They weren't bringing up linebackers and blitzing an awful lot. They were playing their typical defense. So it wasn't like you come out and what are you going to do? You got to run it because you don't have anybody up front.
Do you think Kansas City just maybe also got complacent in that they thought, we got Larry Johnson and these guys can't stop the run. We're going to get 150 yards right there, and we got nothing to worry about here.
I think that was part of it.
That's always a possibility.
But I think Glenn made a great point because the defensive tackles weren't just taking out blockers for the linebackers to make plays. They were making stop after stop after stop, the 2 tackles, on Kansas City's running game. I mean, they were catching them a yard behind the line and dragging them down.
I wouldn't have had it. I don't think I would have had a real problem with it because, I thought they were going to come out and run the football successfully. I just thought Indianapolis would outscore them. I mean, I didn't play thank goodness I didn't play the total because then I got killed on that.
Right.
I would have been on the over had I gone with that side, but the number was high enough, so it kept me off. The thing here was you can withstand a half of a game plan that's not working out, but make the adjustments.
Exactly.
And they got to come out throwing in the second half. And I thought, you know what, this is the playoffs. We got nothing to lose at this point. We got to go to Heward and fire up the team. They just didn't do it.
I'm watching the game with a few people, and right after the kickoff, Kansas City's got the ball first and 10 at the 20 or whatever, and I'm going, everybody in the world and their mother are looking for a run between the tackles on this first play. Isn't this where you play action and you go deep? Right off the bat.
No, my mom said she thought they were going to throw the ball there. We were watching the game, and she said that no.
Well, she was one of the people at the house.
Oh, okay.
She asked me not to invite you. But anyway, you said that you've got to play action there and go deep. I mean, just surprise the heck out of them. Make them have to think, and they didn't make them think.
Switching to another game that there's some questions about how the game plan was. Dallas and Seattle was
a weird
the
game.
Defense. I mean, it was a very weird game.
Right.
Neither team looked very good. They're not impressive ball clubs, and they limped into the playoffs for sure. And then you have all the defensive injuries to the secondary for Seattle, but yet, and they have the wide receivers and supposedly the quarterback on Dallas to take advantage of that, but yet they didn't stretch it. They didn't go downfield. They didn't pressure them in the weak spots. What the heck was going on
Third
there?
and fourth string cornerbacks for Seattle. Isn't it automatic? Right. The only thing is Seattle's been giving up yards, bunches of yards, be it both through the air and on the ground. So it wasn't like Dallas couldn't attack them either place. This team really
had to not go deep hardly at all.
Makes sense.
And yes, but they basically won the football game.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not for just a goofy set of circumstances.
It was a fluke. There's no question about it.
Well, here's the reason I took Dallas. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I got a fortunate win because when I handicapped the game, the reason I took Dallas was because they were going, as Jim was just saying, to throw the ball deep against third and fourth quarterbacks in certain defensive sets because of injuries, and that Terrell Owens, even with all his drops during the regular season, would catch 3 or 4 big passes. Well, wait a second, though. And I also thought Glenn would be able to get open also. But they didn't do it. I also figured they're going to run Jones to the corners, to the outside, to force defensive backs to come up and help out against the run, which further depletes the secondary. They didn't do it. I still got a win, so I call it a fortunate win. It didn't go exactly the way I wanted.
It was a fortunate win, but they actually did.
They were the better team.
They were the better team. They should have won the game. It was a fluke at the end with Romo, and then if it wasn't for the tremendous tackle by Barbineau, he would have ended up in the end zone anyway.
Rather than say the better team won, the less worse team.
The
biggest play of the game was Lofa Tatupu, who somehow stopped him short on the play that eventually got overturned, which they ruled first down, and then was overturned, and it was fourth down, so they had to come out and kick the field goal, because otherwise they would have run the ball in the end zone on the next play, because Holmgren was going to let him score.
Right,
exactly.
So
there's another. I was going to bring that up real quick. I mean, what was it, 21-20? Yeah, 21-20, right? And you've got less than a minute to go, 50 seconds, whatever it was. Seattle's got the ball at their own 5-yard line or whatever it was after the turnover there on the Romo botched snap. There's 50 seconds, maybe a minute to go. They're inside their own 5. You have no timeouts left. Don't you just part the sea and let Alexander go for a touchdown, make it 28-20?
Well, no,
you've got 40 seconds left, and you can still have a chance to win.
The key play, though, was that they let Alexander get the one.
To the
first
20
down.
or 21, but you got to let him go after that.
Yeah,
I think.
I got to tell you something. Sean Alexander's a pretty smart guy. He would not have.
He probably would have gone down around the 40 or something.
Yeah, he would have.
Yeah, or run around.
But you got to try anyway.
Yeah, you got to let him go.
You know,
you have no
we-
chance.
we criticize the officials all the time, but in that game there was that one play that was a key play where they called the first down at the 1 yard line. They bad spot. They reviewed it. It wasn't a challenge. It was inside the 2 minutes, and they reversed it, and they were very correct with that. And that was a key play. So we have to take our hats off.
The tackle by Tatupu in that play was spectacular. Because I thought, he's in.
Sure.
And he just laid him, just stood him straight up and stopped his momentum.
Tiki Barber is retired.
And Tom Coughlin's getting an extension.
Back. I don't get that. All the players didn't want him, and the media didn't seem to want him.
They were one of the least disciplined teams I've ever seen on a football field this year. And
For 2 years now.
Well, really, he's supposed to be a disciplinarian. I don't get it. I just don't get it. And I know the Giants have a lot of talent, but they clearly have not lived up to the anticipated level that they're supposed to be at. And I don't see why suddenly Tom Coughlin is going to get it done next year. Now, he's going to have some new assistants because I'm sure that they are going to make some changes in the coaching staff there. But you're losing your best player. You've still got the nutcases around there. I can't see the future being particularly bright for the Giants right now. They will probably be overrated again going into next season because they've got the name appeal, but they're not winners for the most part of that team.
They've got all-pro potential up and down both sides of the line of scrimmage, defense and offense.
I love that play by Shockey when he lost his helmet.
Oh, yeah.
He is
he
a
lowers
warrior.
his head.
That guy is a warrior. he was ready to knock over everybody. The hat hair
The
flying.
problem is that he'll look great in a play like that, but then 3 plays later he'll do something really stupid.
And he takes away so much from the team's morale on the sideline. He's a Terrell Owens on the sideline, but you mentioned Tom Coughlin being a disciplinarian. I think he's so overboard. He micromanages so much, and he's such a taskmaster that it has an opposite effect of what he's trying to accomplish with his disciplined approach. But when you look at the Giants, the problem I think with them, besides Coughlin coming back, is Eli Manning. When is he going to become a leader? He is not a leader on the field.
No.
He walks off the field and it looks like he's a kid who doesn't have any friends, and he just, there's no leadership. You get in somebody's face. He had a couple passes in that game that could have turned things around for them, where guys dropped the ball or ran the wrong route, and he walks off the field, woe is me, Get in the guy's face and tell him to run the right route, or put some stickum on his hands or something. Get in their face and be a leader. He's not. At least not yet.
I was a little bit amazed. It was Tuesday morning when I was watching ESPN, and Peter King came out. To my knowledge, the first one to report that no, Coughlin's not going anywhere. He actually looks like he's going to be staying and will get an extension. And the first thing I thought was this guy must have he bought the Matt Millen manual on how to keep your job when you don't do it very well.
He's got the same cameraman.
You brought up something about the Millen march.
Oh yeah, so I love this every week in the Detroit newspapers. There's a fan doing something new, and last week they were asking what does God have against the Detroit Lions, and this week I saw where a Detroit fan, a season ticket holder, God bless his heart, is having his Millen Man March to get rid of Matt Millen. So you got to like the Detroit fans. They're obviously more imaginative than the coaching staff has been the last couple of years.
I like that.
I don't know. Did we miss any games? Oh, the Pats and the
yeah.
Jets.
The New England Jets, misleading. I'm happy
New
with the
England
result, but misleading score.
The Jets played very well.
Jets played well.
Well, you know what? I guess we should have expected it because this team's overachieved all season long. Great job by the head coach. You look at you break them down. They don't have a real good offense. They're low ranked, poorly ranked defensively, and yet they found ways to stay competitive. And once again, that was the case. Pennington actually had a pretty good game till the end, Scott. You mentioned that before.
He manages the game really well.
Very smart quarterback.
He's not the most gifted guy out there, obviously, because of the arm problems, and he just can't throw the ball as far as other quarterbacks, but I'll tell you, he really is a smart quarterback.
Sure.
And the running backs run north and south. They're not trying to make a big play every time. They're content to get 4 or 5 yards and keep the chains moving. They're 2 years ahead of schedule to me. I thought the Jets. I mean, I picked them for dead last in the AFC East this year. I thought this is a bad team. They're gonna, they got DeBrickashaw Ferguson is a great draft choice, and they'll be able to get another great draft choice next spring because they're gonna be terrible. For them to go out there 10-6, I thought Mangini just did every bit as good a job as the media is giving him credit for. And even in this game, they lose by 21, but it's nowhere near that kind of a football game.
At least New York has one team with some potential.
Exactly. The one thing I did, though, I wish I would have brought it with me when I was breaking down the game and trying to figure out who I was going to go with last week. And did you see how soft the Jets' schedule was? I mean, they played that last place schedule. And I really started looking at the players they have, and I thought Mangini's done a good job managing this team and everything, and Pennington is a smart quarterback. Eventually, though, they're going to have a quarterback with an arm who can complete those outs.
I agree with that.
And I think next year we're going to find all we need to know about this current Jets roster, the guys that come back, because their schedule gets a lot tougher next year. And I got to tell you guys, as good as Mangini is, as smart as Pennington is, when I break down the players they have going into that schedule next year, this team's 8-8 at best.
Well, but
I really believe that. I really believe that.
To me, the most important thing is getting that foundation, that offensive line, and the cohesiveness in the offensive line. They got two outstanding guys who just completed their rookie season, Mangold and
Mangold's awesome.
I'm telling you,
another intangible though is where you talk about Manning not having confidence, not being a leader for the Giants. A lot to be said for somebody that believes in themselves, believes in their coaching staff, and the Jets have that.
Oh yeah.
And Pennington. I mean, there have been quarterbacks in the league that didn't have the monster arm like the Elways and I mean, I go back to the days of Bob Greasy. I mean,
sure.
He was a great field general, but he didn't have a monster arm. He wasn't going to throw the ball 75 downfield. But if you design it and you have a smart guy that doesn't throw the ball away and he knows how to manage the game, and you give them a running back or two with an offensive line, they could be dangerous even though they're playing. There are no really great teams in the NFL. I mean, these teams all break down. I mean, look, for example, last year, Philadelphia, we'll talk about this later, but Philadelphia and the Saints were at the bottom of the league. And now they're playing in a championship game. I mean, this league turns upside down. By the way, before we move on to the first segment, Florida, they now hold a title in college basketball and college football. Has that ever been done before?
First time ever.
First time current.
In Division One.
The baseball program down there better pick it up.
And they've always been pretty good too, by the way.
How non-competitive was that game? I mean, the opening kickoff was the only time you really thought, oh man, Ohio State might be, dominate. Other than that, it was all Florida.
I remember a couple of guys watching the game and said, "Whoa, what was that about that stuff about Florida having all the speed? Did you see them run away from those guys on that kickoff?"
We've talked over and over about this. If you've listened to the radio shows or even here on the set in Proline, and this is for years and years and years. They've recruited so much speed on defense in the SEC. It's why it's the best conference. Because defense beats offense. Good defense beats offense. It always has.
I think it's the best conference, but I don't think it's as wide of a margin as most people think.
No,
they got some really pathetic offenses in
but
that league.
I think this is, you know what this is going to do? This is going to make that myth about the SEC even worse, I think.
But there's nothing mythical about the way they recruit for defense.
No, there isn't. But there's something mythical about the fact that a lot of people believe it's so much better than all the other
Look across the board, though, in the SEC. How many teams could have gone on the field with Ohio State out of the SEC and arguably given them a real tough game or beaten them? LSU for sure.
Absolutely.
LSU and Florida. That's about it.
Maybe Auburn. Auburn,
their offense. Their offense is pathetic.
Auburn,
They had like 150 yards against Nebraska.
Wisconsin couldn't move the ball on Auburn.
Yeah.
They were terrible.
Again, you're getting back to the defense as opposed to offense, though. Other than those two, other than Florida and LSU, nobody in the SEC is going to scare you with their offense.
I'll tell you what, Arkansas is a pretty good football team, too. I mean, they made some mistakes late, but Arkansas is a quarterback away from being able to beat anybody.
I think the SEC is the #1 conference in college football this year, so don't get me wrong. I just don't think it's that wide of a gap that everybody thinks it is.
Well, no, it can't be.
Yeah. And by the way, the Big Ten is the most overrated, been saying this since day one, the most overrated conference this year in college football. They've got two. Well, I'm not going to knock Ohio State too badly because this is a pretty darn good football team who had way too much time off, which is another problem with the BCS format that they have. And of course, they didn't have Teddy Ginn. They wouldn't have won this game anyway, but they didn't have him for the second half. He was banged up or injured or didn't want to get back in there and face the Gators. I don't know which one it was. But the bottom line was way too much time off. And then we talked about it a bit since the game happened. What the heck was Jim Tressel doing on fourth down inside his own 30?
That was an awful call.
They gave it that.
I mean, you're only down 10. Why put yourself in that kind of position?
Punt the ball away. You try to stop him. You go into the half. You make some adjustments. Instead, his team was completely taken out of the game at that point.
Yeah, absolutely stunning decision. The thing about why there's no one conference that's going to absolutely dominate is really simple. I mean, and it's the same basic reason that you shouldn't be that surprised when Boise State beats the big name school. You get the 85 scholarship limit. Okay, there's only the days of the few top programs being able to load up with every good player in the country and have these incredibly deep squads while other teams are struggling to field a decent football team at all. Those days are gone. It's completely gone. That's why this BCS format is a crock, because I got to tell you something. There's good football in the Western Athletic Conference. There's good football in the Mountain West Conference, and these teams can go out there and compete on the field with the elite conference schools. There's just a perception that they can't, but they can. That's why the odds maker, these guys on TV are telling you, oh, Boise State's the biggest upset. No, I've never seen anything like it. Hell, they were only a touchdown underdog.
I know, they keep saying that. Isn't that crazy?
They don't get it at all.
Is anybody making the argument that Boise should be number one?
They got a vote.
One guy did.
One vote.
The associate, and here's what bugs me about the media guys. Here's your chance. They'll write columns and talk about how the BCS ought to be blown up, which I agree with. Well, if you want to blow it up, you had your opportunity.
Exactly.
AP writers, you had your opportunity. You were not compelled to vote Florida number one. You could have blown up the system by voting the only unbeaten team number one. Whether you think they're the best team or not, doesn't matter. If Boise State had taken 20 votes away,
It would have been great.
I got to tell you something. You'd be much closer to a playoff format.
But you know what's wrong with
now
the
than you
media?
are.
And the reason I love it when I turn on those programs and I see them going against me on my plays.
Oh, you got to love it.
The reason here's the media is bandwagon jumpers. That's it.
Well,
they saw
really
the Florida
don't know
game,
what
and that was the
they're
last thing in their mind. And Florida's the best.
There was a handicapping system years ago that I knew a friend of mine used, and he'd get one of the New York papers and he'd get all the picks of the writers. They had all the writers in there, and they'd pick the games for every NFL game. And he would look at the one that had the most selections for that week against the number, go against them, be almost 70%. It was
all the time.
And just because the
Makes it a
media
lot
just
easier,
have
less
no
homework.
idea what they're doing.
They don't.
Especially against the point spread. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about an NBA game, switch over to the round ball from the oblong thing, to talk about the Cavaliers and the Clippers.
When we return, Saturday's NBA game between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the LA Clippers.
Welcome back to Proline. Before we get to the NBA, the Cavaliers, and the Clippers, I want to talk a little bit about a website we talked about last week, rotoplay.com. Now, I personally don't play a lot of fantasy games, but I know that Dave does. And you've been checking out this website.
There's some really unique concepts here because, first of all, it's not season long. There's nothing wrong with that. But let's face it, if you get off to a bad start in a fantasy league or a fantasy competition, a lot of times your interest is going to wane. They've got new contests in different sports every 2 weeks. I mean, for instance, basketball, college and pro. You've got different fantasy leagues taking place every 2 weeks where you can win prize money. You can go head-to-head with a friend and have a little riding on it. There's all kinds of things there. I mean, it really is the most unique fantasy site that you're going to find. There's free newsletters. It's really worth checking out. And all you need to do is just go there and see if you like it, register if you do, and maybe get involved in some of the leagues. And who knows, you might walk away a winner and maybe have some extra cash in your pocket, too. Rotoplay.com is the site. Go check it out.
Thank you, Dave. The NBA game, Clippers and the Cavaliers. Glenn, I'm going to start off with you. You've had a tremendous football season. And last week you had a huge play on the Patriots. And then you came back on Monday with that very easy play with Florida. That was a great call. What do you have for us this week? I know you got some free offers.
I do have a free offer. Before, let's get the bad news out. I really had a poor weekend in college and pro basketball. Just the second losing hoops weekend of the entire year, to give you an idea how things have gone. But as Jim mentioned, the football was great, capping off a spectacular college campaign with an easy win in the BCS Championship. Florida just clocked Ohio State. Matter of fact, that my 5th big year in college football over the last 6 seasons. And of course, the pros went great. Had a big insider on Sunday on the New England Patriots, a playbook call on the New York Giants. Now this week, both of Saturday's divisional games free. Plus, you're going to get my College Hoops Vegas Team Game of the Year. All 3 plays, and they're all absolutely free at 1-800-531-7069. Give me a call. Now let's talk some pro basketball.
Pro basketball. Cavaliers and the Clippers. The Clippers were touted to be a pretty good team this year. Cavaliers also, but the Cavaliers are playing fairly well. What has happened to the Clippers?
I think that 2 things have happened. One is that I think they may have gotten wrapped up in their own hype a little bit. And the second thing is that they've had health issues. They right now seem to be the healthiest they've been in a while. Cassell looks like he's okay. You know, his back can go out tomorrow, but at least right now he looks okay. Mobley had a very good game earlier this week, which is important. He'd been hurt a little bit. Mobley needs to start taking a little more, inputting himself a little more into the offense. He's been standing around a lot this year and letting other guys shoot. I think the Clippers may finally be understanding that Sean Livingston is more hype than substance, and his minutes have dropped back a little bit. Elton Brand's just playing great ball. Kaman's starting to get a little bit sharper. I think the Clippers are going to make a run, and any game can go the wrong way, but this team is too good to be struggling under 500, which is where they've been all year. And I really get the sense that they're about to go on a little. I think I've seen a buy signal out of this team recently.
Well, the Cavaliers play much better at home, of course, than they do on the road. Of course, most NBA teams are like that. But how about in this game?
The Eastern Conference was just, knocked around early on by the Western Conference, and now they're on the road. They've been on the road for a while. 5th game, and what is it? The 5th road game in the last 6 or something like that for the Cavaliers. I'll tell you why I believe that the Clippers are a buy on right now. Sam Cassell. If this guy's healthy, this team gels. Everybody, and one of the guys you did mention, Ewing, everybody on this team is a better basketball player when Sam Cassell is healthy. And as Dave mentioned, he can go down at any time, but you want to play on the LA Clippers or stay away from them when Sam Cassell is directing what's going on the court. As far as the Cleveland Cavaliers are concerned, the reason they struggle away from home is it's LeBron and a bunch of role players. And, if I'm LeBron James, I think he's got the right, because of the type of player he is, because of the type of person he's been for this organization in the offseason. I think this kid's got a right to come out and say, you better get me some players next year or I'm going to be looking to go elsewhere. Because,
Either that or next time, don't try and lowball Carlos Boozer.
Yeah,
and expect him not to take the money someplace else. Boy,
that
mistake by the Cavaliers has turned out to be huge for the Jazz.
I mean, look at Gauskas. He's okay, but he's okay.
Yeah,
he's not.
Drew Gooden is okay, but he's not.
He's overhyped.
He's not.
He was overhyped. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Actually, King James, he's so good that on certain nights, a lot like Kobe, he can just simply win a game all by himself. But when he gets some help, this Cavalier team gets to be pretty strong. And recently, the guy you mentioned, Drew Gooden, has played excellent basketball. This team's now won 5 in a row, going into late Thursday night action. 5 in a row, 8 of their last 9. 4 of those were on the road. And one of the key contributors is Gooden. Over the last 4 games, 22 points, 13 rebounds. If he produces like that, this is a really good basketball team. Because James is just one of the true talents.
I think that it's an anomaly when he has a good run
I don't know. I think they're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the East.
Well,
this Clipper team,
Gooden, though.
Yeah,
it's like that's a once in a season type of thing when he goes on a stretch.
Yeah, he's had stretches where he's looked real good, but he does disappear.
Right.
Maybe this is a case of him finally coming around. I don't know. Problem with this Clipper team, though, and it's been the case, I remember you mentioning them last season, or maybe it was early this year, Scott, this team simply has no outside game. I mean, they're dead last in the NBA in three-point shooting. And when you're that poor, it makes it very difficult to get on big runs.
That's one of the reasons I think Mobley needs to start becoming more of a force offensively, because he can stretch a defense. Mobley's an underrated guy. He's been a solid player for a long time.
Oh, yeah, and Cassell. You mentioned him, too. Of course, he had the problems with the big. He also has a problem with what's it called, plantar fasciitis. It's a heel problem, and it's really difficult.
Did you get that out of medical school?
Well, my wife happens to have it. That's why I know about it. So I mean, it's really difficult.
Yeah, it's painful.
Candy cappers?
We're candy hoppers.
Anyway, it's been a real problem for him, and that's something that can come back and bother him for the rest of the season. And boy, if they don't have him.
Oh, no, they got no shot without him. Because Livingston just is, have you ever seen more noise about a guy who's, I mean, he's not a stiff or anything like that, but he's not nearly as good as teammates said he was going to be. He's just an average guy. Sure. I don't see anything in his game watching him that indicates to me that he's going to have this sudden breakthrough and become a great star. And
that goes back to the media hype again.
Really?
Exactly.
We talk about we've been downing the media or dissing the media for a while, and
they're not going to like us too much.
No, well, they never have. But we're going to come back. We're going to talk about an ACC game. That's college basketball with Wake Forest and North Carolina State.
Coming up next, ACC basketball with the NC State Wolfpack taking on the Wake Forest Demon Deacons.
One of the hottest handicappers in the country, Dave Koken, has gone 12-0 in the NFL in the last couple of weeks. That's an amazing run, Dave. And I know you have a big offer coming this week. And you weren't too bad in the bowl game either because you came out with Florida, and I know you had a lot of other wins.
Well, in the colleges, one of the things I like is defensive dogs. Just to tell you how good it was. You can write this down and archive it yourself for next year when the college bowls come around, because this thing's a huge winner. The team underdogs in bowl games that allow less than 100 yards per game rushing. 7-0 this year, and I was on every one of them. 7-0 last year. 40-11, going back to like 1991. 40 wins and 11 losses against the spread. It's like free money, so keep that for next year, and you'll win money in the bowls. The NFL is not my best league during the regular season for whatever reason, but it seems like every year, December and January, what I'm looking for in this league starts to work. And boy, has it ever gone crazy the last couple weeks. 8-0 last week, and now 4-0, 2 weeks ago, I should say, and then 4-0 this past week in the wild card round. All sides, no totals. I'm going to give you both of the Saturday games completely free of charge. Just call 1-800-547-4224. Plus, I want to get you basketball. Under the hat plays are among my strongest plays. I'm going to give you an entire week of under the hat plays, college and pro basketball included in that offer. Plus, I've got a conference game of the year, and I've only had one of those so far in college basketball. It was a winner. You're going to get my second conference game of the year, which goes on Saturday. That'll be free of charge as well. So let me recap that. 1-800-547-4224. Both Saturday NFL sides, college basketball conference game of the year, and then a week of college and pro basketball under the hat releases. Make sure and call that number, 1-800-547-4224.
Now we're going to talk about the Wake and North Carolina State game. You have two young clubs here. One team, NC State, doesn't play all that well on the road, and Wake plays very well at home. What do you think about this one?
I thought NC State had I didn't use them. I liked Clemson a little bit earlier this week, but I thought they were in a great spot if they were going to make some kind of a statement to be able to knock off Clemson in Raleigh. They weren't able to do it, and they showed what they're made of. They're young, as you just said. And when it became crunch time in that game, all of a sudden Clemson was able to widen the margin and run away with the victory by double digits, 11 points. One thing that Wake Forest is doing, and it's been kind of amazing because, as you mentioned, they're a young team. They're getting way behind in games. Have you seen this, guys, lately? Getting way behind, 18 to 20 points, and then making these huge runs, like from the 7-minute mark to go in the second half.
But is
down
is that them or the other team relaxing?
Well, that's what I'm going to say. I'm watching. I had Boston College, like you did too, the other night, Dave, and had Boston College as a big play over Wake, and they're up by about 20 points midway through the second half, and next thing you know, it's a 4-point game. And if you're watching the contest, Boston College stopped attacking the basket. They were scoring at will.
I imagine most people around the country were aware of what was happening just by hearing my voice. I had Boston College.
You and I were harmonizing together.
I think all of us were on Boston College at that time.
But that's what Wake is doing right now. They're outclassed at the start of the game. They're not particularly coached well. I hate to have to say that, but I think, he's got to be gone after this year. The bottom line is, though, they are making these huge runs at the end. Part of it is the fact that teams are letting down a little bit, but part of it is that they just start bombing away and they're pretty good. Drum's not a bad player. He got taken out of the BC game the other night at the end because somebody had to foul, and he was the only one that was thinking, we've got to foul and send these guys to the free throw line. And he picked up like 3 fouls in about a 45-second span late in the second half. But I got to go with Wake Forest in this game. I don't think NC State's got much.
NC State, you said young. Wake, Prosser's team is incredibly young.
Yeah.
They've got 3 freshmen starting in this lineup. 2 of the next 3 guys that come off the bench, both freshmen. So you're talking about an 8-man rotation, 5 of them first-year players. 2 of them look like real keepers. Williams, 6'4", a really rebounding terror for his size, and they got a kid, Ishmael Smith, they got him late to come into the program, and he looks like he's going to develop into one of the best point guards in the ACC eventually. So it's not surprising they're falling behind. They're so incredibly young, but they are talented. I think they come back. North Carolina State, it's devastating. They waited for 9 games to get their guard Astor, their leading scorer from last year, back. Then he missed the last contest against not against Boston College. Clemson. He came back, the first game back, had 10 assists against Clemson, or against Boston College. Then he doesn't even play in the last contest. Sidney Lowe, the coach, he played 6 players in that contest. Actually 7. One guy played 1 minute.
Choice.
I mean, I understand that, but I mean, that's just too much of something to overcome. They're just so shorthanded. I agree with Scott, and I think you said, Dave, I would go with Wake.
I haven't given a pick on the game yet.
Okay.
But that's okay.
He reads your mind.
Was I right?
What's the strange?
Am I right?
I don't know. I'm probably not going to have a play in this game. I'll talk about it a little bit. It's not a game. I'm not saving it for the service or anything like that. I just don't have a good opinion of this game.
That's your conference game of the year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Come on.
Skip Prosser, I think Skip Prosser gets a reprieve at Wake, even though I would agree that he has not done a great coaching job here. Part of what he has done is really get the community excited about the program. He's been good for ticket sales, and it lagged at the end of the Dave Odom administration. He came in and got people fired up, and that will earn you a little extra time. And the fact that they've lost so many people over the last 2 years, and he's having to start from scratch, he may get another season. I also kind of like what Sidney Lowe's done so far with NC State. They are very limited in terms of talent. In fact, I think they're the worst team in the league on paper. He got kind of a late start and didn't really get a chance to recruit well. But the one thing that it goes back to Sidney Lowe, the player. You're very much seeing a reflection of that in the style of play that NC State has. They take good care of the basketball for a very limited team. That may keep them in some games later on against clearly superior teams. Right now, in this game, I think NC State may be a hair better than Wake Forest, but the game's at Wake Forest. I don't know what to do with it, so I'll just listen.
I think Prosser. I think you guys are right. Prosser gets one more year because of how young his team is, and he has recruited pretty well. So you got to give him at least one more season.
I remember a famous coach, Al McGuire, once saying that the best thing about freshman players is they become sophomores.
Amen.
We're going to come right back. We've got a Mountain West game. We've got Colorado State at San Diego State coming right up.
Next up, more college hoops action from the Mountain West as Colorado State takes on the San Diego State Aztecs.
Well, we always talk about smoking Dave Koken, and he's been absolutely red hot. The guy on my left over here, and you're right, Scott Spreitzer, smoking Scott Spreitzer, 16-4 in all sports, 4-0 in the wild card games, including the Colts as your wild card game of the year, and a revenge game in college basketball with Northern Iowa. Mm-hmm. What's going on over there?
We've been winning pretty well, Jim. I got to say that we started out Saturday with that revenge game of the month, winner on Northern Iowa. Didn't have a good Saturday in college basketball overall, our first rough Saturday in over a month in college baskets. I like the smoking Scott Spreitzer thing.
You do?
I lose a little bit more hair, and I'm going to borrow his Kingo. But I tell you what we've got going right now is, do you guys know that Dave's a lot older than me? Anyway, what we've got going on right now is a 3-0 guaranteed on my action report. 3-0 guarantee, not guaranteed. It's a 3-0 guarantee on the action report right now for $25 at 1-900-868-3350. And, of course, it's up all weekend long right here at the website. What you're going to get on there is my divisional round game of the year in the pro football playoffs. You're also going to get my odds maker blowout game of the year in college basketball, part of a 2-play package in college baskets. Altogether, 3 plays, and all 3 must win, or you're going to get the rest of January free from Smash Mouth Sports. Get it all right now online or by calling 1-900-868-3350, just $25. And we're talking Mountain West basketball.
Absolutely.
We've got a team that's really underachieving right now.
Well,
in
San Diego State, it seems like the good players on that team are worried about their personal stats, looking to play in the NBA maybe next year, and they're not really playing basketball as a team. They're very disappointing. Colorado State's a little bit stronger. big game in the Mountain West this week?
Well, Abakar's, I think, probably not as good as advertised.
He's okay.
You know, he's okay.
He's not. The team isn't. They've been soft so far. I think they read their own press clippings. I mean, San Diego State was picked to win the Mountain West Conference by a pretty substantial margin. I mean, they were nearly unanimous in the media poll. In fact, they may have been unanimous. And, you know, they're talking about, well, last year they just missed winning that game against Indiana in the NCAA tournament. And even though Webster Slaughter's gone, another brilliant move, by the way, Slaughter leaves early and then doesn't get drafted at all. You know, they got so much coming back, and good, the kid from Las Vegas is transferred in. They're going to be loaded. They should be a team that wins 2 games this year minimum. And well, they forgot to play the regular season so far, and they have not recovered from the Arizona game. They hadn't really played well up to that game. They had some narrow victories, but you know, just kind of they're getting through these games anyway. Then they get smoked by Arizona on their home court. That was a big game for that team, and I think now they've lost their confidence and never really got into a flow. They're not a very good team right now. Colorado State, this big kid, Jason Smith's a good player. He's not the best defender in the world, but he's a load offensively. He's a 7-footer. He's got some good moves. You know, a nice finesse player. He's going to play at the next level for sure. And they're overachieving. They're playing better than I thought they were. I did not think that Dale Ayer had a very good team this year, and thought they just had some size but no real substance. I'm impressed with what they've done this year. Beat Utah handily the other night on their home court. And I don't see why Colorado State can't go on the road and win this basketball game. I think they're just a better team right now.
I agree with you. And the problem with this squad, they've lost their last 2 games now, 0-2 to start conference play. They're a talented squad, but they're not a team. And I think this goes right back to not the players so much as Steve Fisher. This guy can coach, or pardon me, can recruit your pants off. Great recruiter. You go all the way back to his Michigan days, but he can't coach a lick. Seriously, he really can. They were up by Washington State by 10 about 10, 15 days ago against a real good Washington State team. Down to 10, they ended up losing by 10. Just fell apart. No adjustments in the second half when Washington State got a run. Fisher just standing there, just kind of dumbfounded. I just don't think he's much of a coach. Colorado State, we mentioned the big men. They've got 2 men, Creason also, 2 good size here. I think that they can do some business on the glass against this team, because in those 2 conference losses for San Diego State, they were out-rebounded by a total of 22. So I think that the visitors got a real good chance in this game.
There's been a 5-game recent run by San Diego State where they've turned the ball over 100 times.
Wow.
You know, there's like 3 coaches right now that are rolling the ball off the rack and saying, hey, there it is, guys, go for it, have fun. And it's Steve Fisher at San Diego State. It's Penders over at Houston. And in the NBA, Tony Baroni, and you can't blame him, he's an interim coach right now with the Memphis Grizzlies. And they're playing these 130 to 120 type of games. But, yeah, you're right. I think Steve Fisher is one of the most overrated basketball coaches in the past 15 to 20 years. He can recruit well. The bottom line is he doesn't. The X's and O's aren't there. And when you look at San Diego State early in the year, I did have a main event on them real early. I'm trying to think who they beat. They beat them by about 30 points. But they're, as you just mentioned, you hit it on the head. You've got like 7 or 8 superior athletes on the San Diego Aztecs roster and no teamwork whatsoever. Heath is looking for his shot. Abukar wants more passes to go inside and take his shot. It's ridiculous.
You know what? They're the anti-Krugers.
They are.
Because we're seeing the team concept work beautifully for UNLV. I mean, we're so impressed. Everybody in town is with what Lon Kruger's doing with the team. It's got some limitations, believe me, because they're playing as a team, and they're therefore, I guess you could say, overachieving, and might overachieve themselves right to the NCAA tournament. Complete opposite in San Diego State. They do have the most talent in the league, and for them to be playing at this poor level, I do think you have to trace that to the coach.
Too many athletes,
Speaking of a team, I think
individuals for this team to be scoring 58 points in Provo, Utah, like they did the other night. So,
talking about talent over teams, another team, Air Force, perfect example of team play and what you can do with it. Getting back to the Rams for a second, I'll tell you what, it's a shame. If they had a bona fide outside shooter, this team would really be tough, because they really don't. So they usually get it packed in, and that big guy generally is being double teamed almost
I think
constantly.
he's going to be a lottery pick.
You think so? Yeah, he's pretty sharp.
Because he does have defensive shortcomings. He's really not a good cover guy. But when you're 7 feet tall and you get decent offensive moves like that, you can put the ball in the basket, they'll refine your defense in the NBA. 7-footers who can score in the NBA. They're getting a job.
You know what? Can we talk about? We're going to go 7-footers of the NBA. This is so funny to me the other day. You know, Houston went on this what was it, about a 6-2 run, 6-1, something like that. The first 5-6 games that Yao Ming was out, and again, we're going to just rip the media apart. This is great today. I'm watching one of the.
Somebody suggested he wasn't valuable anymore.
4-letter networks that shows a lot of sports.
Was his initials SB?
Yes, it was. You heard the same thing.
Okay, yeah, I heard.
He said that the Houston Rockets are a better basketball team without Yao Ming.
Yeah.
And he took this little 5-6 game stretch to explain why. But what he didn't mention is that they played the dregs of the NBA in the last 5 or 6 games with nobody to guard Tracy McGrady, and has been able to go off for 35 points per contest. This team has no shot without Yao Ming and Tracy McGrady on the court at the same time. If one of those guys is out, they're a much lesser team. So just getting back to that 7-footers in the NBA, and another guy, you guys want to stay away from these guys who say stupid things like the Houston Rockets are a better team without Yao Ming. Just ridiculous.
It's just absurd. By the way, one thing we haven't commented on yet, I want to throw my comment in. Did you see the reasoning that this guy gave from one of the newspapers in Chicago for not voting for Ripken and Gwynn? It's basically because Hall of Fame, obviously, earlier this week, and he said because there's never been a unanimous choice because Ruth and Matheson and those guys didn't get in unanimously. He says he never votes for anybody in their first year of eligibility. This guy should not be allowed to vote.
He shouldn't be voting.
In fact, he shouldn't be allowed to read a newspaper, let alone write for one. What this guy is saying, basically, is because some Dumbo back in 1935 didn't vote for Babe Ruth for who knows what possible reason. Well, then nobody else should get in free. That is idiotic. That's about the most dumbest thing I have ever heard anybody say. And at least it wasn't SB on that show who said that. So he's not the dumbest guy of the week.
Was Babe Ruth any good?
Oh, I think. Well, you know, he would have been if the Yankees hadn't ruined his career as a pitcher.
Yeah.
You know,
Maybe he went in as a pitcher first, and they didn't vote him unanimously.
that's what it was.
Although then again, why not unanimous as a pitcher too?
how do you not vote for Tony Gwynn or Cal Ripken?
That's just ridiculous. It's idiotic.
Absolutely amazing. But we're having fun just knocking the media this week. I mean,
Guess so.
they may not want to watch this show, so media tune out. We'll be right back. We got a big NFL matchup coming up.
In a moment, the Saints host the Eagles in Saturday's NFC divisional playoff game. But first, we'll hear from world champion handicapper Jim Feist, who bounced back Monday with a winning side and total in Monday's BCS game, and who won 63% of his personal service college basketball releases last week. This week, Jim has a monster 5-game package.
That's right. I'm going to bounce back big this weekend. I have a 5-game package. I have 3 college conference games of the year, and I have 2 games in the divisional playoffs. All in this one number, 1-900-772-9991, or right here on Picks Online, right on the website. It's a $29 call, 1-900-772-9991. All 5 games must win, or the rest of January's executive service is free. 5 big games, 5 games that will win, 3 college basketball games, and 2 in the NFL. 1-900-772-9991. Now we're going to talk about one of those NFL games, the Eagles at the Saints. They played earlier this year at a Rock'em Sock'em game. Saints took off, had a big lead. Philadelphia comes back and takes the lead. Saints come back, tie it up, and then at the end of the game they get a field goal to win at 27-24. 51 points in the game. At that time, McNabb was playing. Garcia, arguably, right now, is the better quarterback than McNabb. They have better balance in their offense. They have a different offensive coordinator calling the plays. They have about 50% running, 50% passing, and that's made them a better team. I think they're on a 6-1 run with Garcia. Of course, Breeze and company with the new head coach down there, Peyton, who wins Coach of the Year, have been red hot. Number 1 and number 2 offensive teams in the league match up this weekend in this game. What do you think?
I'm a big Garcia fan, but he started to kind of come back to earth a little bit, I thought, last week. 17 for 31, a quarterback rating of just over 70, and missed some routes. I mean, just flat out missed some routes where guys were cutting to where they were supposed to be. Now, you don't take one game and say, okay, well, he's had one bad game, and after 6 good games, all of a sudden he's not a good quarterback anymore. You know what I like what Reed has done? And everybody thinks Reed's a genius. He is to a certain extent. But if Donovan McNabb would have had this offense when he was healthy and playing quarterback, I think we would have seen a better Donovan McNabb. All of a sudden, when he's gone and they bring in Jeff Garcia, Reed goes to a legitimate West Coast attack, which means running the ball when it's there. And that's why Westbrook is averaging over 5 yards per carry since, and he's become an even more integral part of the passing game out of the backfield. They went to a legitimate West Coast attack. Donovan McNabb's got to be on the sideline scratching his head saying, where was this when I was healthy? But anyway, the problem here is they will be able to move the ball, but New Orleans, I think, is going to be able to move the ball at will against this secondary that is really banged up. It wasn't that good anyway. Now Lito Shepherd's missing, and I believe they gave up about 270 passing yards per game during the season when Shepherd was injured and not playing in their game. So I think there's going to be a ton of points in this one. I think it sails way over the total.
Well, before the season started, I looked at the Saints and thought you should go over in every game this team plays. I thought they might have a pretty good offense, but I thought their defense was just going to be an absolute sieve. And it really has surprised me from that standpoint how well they played, and that's why the Saints have won as many games as they have. The offense has lived up to billing and then some, and the defense has been respectable. But I think it started to fade a little bit late, and you know, it looks to me like Philadelphia's got some vulnerabilities defensively that the Saints should be able to exploit. You know, the odds makers put the total up in a, you know, it's in a range where it's not that easy to just go in there and say, okay, I'll take the over. But I really do think that the first game that these two teams played was a harbinger of things to come in the rematch, and I think you're going to see plenty of points here.
Well, good.
In the first game, Philadelphia came out for some reason. Well, actually, it was predictable. I think in the situation they were in, the Saints looked like a good play in that game. At the time, they came out flat, and the Saints took advantage. And at halftime, I think it was 17-3 Saints, and it snuck over at the time because it ended up 51 points. I don't think anybody's coming out flat in this game. It's going to be an interesting game to watch. Clay?
I think one of the reasons Scott mentioned the fact that when McNabb was quarterbacking his team was, hey, a different play calling at that time.
Big time.
It's improved tremendously. Westbrook wasn't 100% early in the season, too. And, of course, when he's healthy, he's just an extraordinary back. And, of course, you've seen what he's done in the last couple of ball games here. I agree with you guys. I think this game could go over. I'd like to play the Saints in this contest, but then I believe firmly in experience and momentum. And, of course, Philadelphia has those edges. They've won 6 straight, 3 as an underdog. This team has experience. They've won 5 of the last 6 divisions. They've got a terrific coach on the sidelines. So I'd rather stick with the total also, and I'll go over.
You got to remember, Stallworth missed the first game.
Yeah,
he was out.
And also, and Horn is healthy
Horn,
too.
Yeah, Horn is
healthy. Stallworth, I'm sure, would love to do some damage against his former team.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Scott, you mentioned Lito Shepherd. I mean, it was a terrible break for Philadelphia when he went down.
That was a nasty injury too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he's an exceptional cornerback. This is really going to hurt.
This will be the best party of the week in the NFL.
Good point.
Playoff atmosphere in New Orleans, boy, that'll be a lot of fun. Good for the city.
I remember when remember the game when Atlanta went to New Orleans the opening night of that when it was reopened. Awesome. I'm wondering if that atmosphere is going to be there. It has to be this year.
It's going to be close.
I mean, here they are back in the playoffs. Both teams are at the bottom of their conference.
But a slightly more difficult opponent this time around than the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, well,
Michael Vick is a lot better than Garcia.
I'll tell you, he probably gets paid more.
I'm sure he does. By the way, if you're done, I'm watching the game last week, and we had the Giants, so we're fortunate we got that in. That was nice. But I'm watching the sideline, and I'm thinking, they show Donovan McNabb in street clothes, and he's being a very positive part of this team while he's on the sideline, but he's got to be thinking in the back of his mind, damn, am I glad Jeff Garcia is 36 and not 31?
Oh.
That's right. He could easily lose his job to this guy. There's no, especially, if they just keep going. If they win this game, it's going to be a remarkable story. Either one of these teams win. It's
really
a remarkable story
for
either
and
side.
It shows you how good the chemistry is in Philadelphia, because Garcia probably gets offers in the offseason. I think he's probably not going to take them, and will come back and play Donovan McNabb's caddy again next year. Just
that competitive fire, though.
Addition by subtraction. Just removing that TO from that situation.
Sure.
Got everybody back, that sense of relief. And boy, don't you think they have to do the same thing in Dallas?
Is he a problem? T.O. is a problem?
Before we move on to the best bets, I think we should talk. What is happening with Parcells and T.O.? Does anybody know?
I think Parcells is going to come back.
Kind of looks like
I don't know what will happen with Terrell Owens. My guess is that they would like to get him out of there if possible.
You know, you're talking about Garcia coming back next year to Philly, and I wonder if that's going to happen, because the reason those guys are, there's like college players and then there's NFL players, and sometimes college players are great in college and they never make it in pro football. They try for a couple of years, they never catch on, whatever, there's something missing. And I think the guys like at Garcia's level, they have that competitive fire burning in their stomach where they're not going to settle. And Garcia,
no doubt he does.
He had an incredible competitive fire. And I wonder if he's going to be around next year in Philly.
He would only go, that if he leaves, it would only be for what he considers to be an ideal situation.
Kind of like Petrino, yeah.
Which would have to be a contender. You'd have to be going to a contender where he's going to play.
I agree, yeah.
Well, how about the Miami Dolphins? Who do they have at quarterback down there? Almost nobody. I mean, Harrington and Doug Straw coming back. I mean, you take a guy like Garcia. I mean, he could probably run that team better than what they have.
Well, I think he could, definitely.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, he's not suited. He's not suited for that offense.
Well, it's a different philosophy. Well, what's the offense going to be now? We don't know yet. Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't.
He's perfect for the West Coast, legitimate West Coast.
If you're going to bring in a West Coast offense, he's fine. But there aren't that many West Coast offense guys around anymore. So.
How many college coaches have succeeded going to the pros?
Not many.
I mean, Atlanta just picks up Petrino, who's going to stay for a lifetime at Louisville.
Yeah, right.
Well, that lifetime's over,
Actually,
Jim.
this is breaking news. Petrino's been in Atlanta for a week. He's already looking for another job.
By the way, Jim, that was a lifetime ago.
That was a lifetime ago. That was 2 weeks.
I think what you're seeing more of in the NFL, and I do think this will be a continuing trend, is assistants getting head coaching jobs. And it's a smart move because they don't cost as much. And, if it doesn't work out after 2 or 3 years, okay, well, he's gone, we'll try another one. You go with a big money route, you're spending a ton, and there's no guarantee it's going to work with any coach. But certainly the transition from colleges to the pros has not worked for a lot of these guys in basketball or football.
Who has it worked for? Who was successfully made the transition?
Walsh? Bill Walsh? I mean,
yeah,
it's been a while.
That's going back quite a ways.
That's what I'm saying. It's been a while.
Terry, Dick Vermeil, obviously. But really, of the new breed, there hasn't been too many.
You know what I like is a youngish offensive coordinator, a guy who hasn't been stuck. I don't want to hire a head coach who was an assistant for 20 years. I want to get a guy who's maybe been an assistant for 3 or 4 years. He's offensive minded, and that's why I like the hiring.
Peyton,
yeah, exactly.
Peyton is a perfect example of that.
Yeah. Good young mind.
He's done a remarkable job. We're going to come back. We have the best bets still going. We'll see you in a minute.
Coming up next are Proline Best Bets, the biggest selection from today's show.
For my best bet, it'll be the pro game we talked about, the Eagles and the Saints over the total. And be sure and give me a call this weekend. It's a free offer. Both Saturday divisional games. Free. And my Vegas team game of the year in college hoops. A trio of huge contests all in the house of Primetime Sports. Give me a call. 1-800-531-7069.
I'll get to the free play and the best bet in just a moment. I do want to tell you that Saturday, January 13th, I'm celebrating another birthday, and here's the thing. I've always run some kind of a special on my birthday to match the number of years that I've been around. But Jim said, listen, nobody's going to buy a $108 special, so you better give away something for free, and he's right. No, actually, we've been on a really good roll. The pro football the last 2 weeks, 12-0. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. The college bowls were absolutely sensational on the bigger plays. And I've got the 2 pro football playoff games for Saturday, completely free of charge. I'm going to include my second conference basketball game of the year, plus a full week of my under-the-hat releases in college and pro basketball. This is all on the house, 1-800-547-4224. Best bet, I'm going to take Colorado State. I think they can go into San Diego and beat the struggling Aztec squad.
Well, I'll tell you what, my best bet is going to be in college basketball. So I'm going to take Wake Forest over NC State. And, folks, you won't want to miss out on this week's card at Smash Mouth Sports. It's a 3-play guarantee. All 3 plays must win or the rest of January will be free. And that includes my odds maker blowout game of the year in college basketball on Saturday. It also includes my pro football divisional round game of the year. And we were 4-0 last week, 100% winners. in the wild card round. We won our wild card game of the year with the Colts, and we're currently on a 16-4, 80% run. Take advantage. 1-900-868-3350. Only $25 will get it right here online.
Dave wasn't exactly candid about his special for his birthday, I have to tell you. Usually on his birthday, he invites all the exotic dancers from the Linden Gardens over to his house absolutely free. You know, he's used to doing that. Why did you tell him about that, Dave?
I think maybe I ought to go down there and do that.
And you do the recruiting.
Yeah.
You pass out little cards.
Sounds like a good idea to me.
At your house?
Recruit their pants off.
Better than Steve Fisher. Yeah.
And I got to follow that with my promo. Everybody on the panel's been red hot lately in sports, and you should use all their offers. I'm coming back with a 5-0 package this week, 3 college games, college conference games of the year, and 2 games in the pro NFL playoffs. Make sure you make the call to 1-900-772-9991. It's just a $29 call, or right here on the website at Picks Online. If all 5 games don't win, January's executive service is absolutely free. It's been fun being with you again this week. I hope all the games that everybody are super wealthy at the end of the weekend. Make sure you use our plays, call our lines, go to Picks Online. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching us this week, and be sure to catch Proline on the web next weekend, available Friday nights for more great insight.